I'm not gonna lie, Aoife definitely has some problems, but surprisingly enough, he's also not the worst 4-star to come out in a while. I know, encouraging words, right? But in this video, I want to showcase to you what this bro is capable of at C0, in which teams he thrives, and of course, I'll also showcase his constellations as well. But first, today's sponsor is Ugreen in collaboration with Genshin Impact. So I recently came back from a trip where I kept using Ugreen's latest Kinich themed charger, and it's been a great experience. It's a really fast 65-watt charger with 3 convenient ports. 2 of them are USB Type-C and 1 is USB Type-A. This charger easily can replace messy setups, or it's super useful when hotels don't have enough sockets close to each other. On top of that, it's quite small and will barely take up any space. I also love using this fast 15-watt wireless charger. It's got a great adjustable view, hence I was charging my iPhone when working on important stuff, but it also works with Qi-enabled Bluetooth headphones like my AirPods. And those who have Apple Watches, they can be charged as well. Finally, there's the powerful 20,000 mAh power bank with this super cool Kinich design. And look, even AHA shows up when it's booted up. This power bank can easily track charging and battery and supports 130-watt dual port and 100-watt single port charging. It's been a blast using it on my travels. So yeah, I highly recommend checking out these limited edition Kinich themed design products. You can use my link in the description and receive up to 20% off, so don't miss out on this great deal. Okay, so in this showcase, Aoife is using Viridescent Venereer set, and he is built with triple elemental mastery main stats. While the chosen weapon for now is going to be prototype Amber, but I'll also share some other weapon choices too. Now, don't get spooked, but Aoife's talents are all at level 6. I could use my 2 new weekly boss materials here to level up some of them, but the truth is, this guy basically cares about elemental mastery since his healing and reaction damage depend on it. So it's really only the skill that matters and provides better healing. But I'll share the calcs how much he can heal at higher talent levels, although, spoiler alert, this guy has some of the saddest healing potential in the entire game. But yeah, as always, Aoife for now is Constellation 0. Okay, so starting off with normal attacks, it's a cool 3-shot combo that deals negligible damage, but can be used in rotations to shred enemies' resistance with the VV set, so nice as always. Next, the burst. I legit think they just copy-pasted Hazel's burst because they look so similar. But anyway, this burst will group enemies if possible and also trigger another hit of the infused patch element. The multipliers are actually pretty good here, but because Aoife's most reliable build in general is going to be full elemental mastery, this attack will feel like a wet noodle. Finally, we have the elemental skill, the most important part of Aoife's kit. So since he's from Natlan, you can fly around with him thanks to this trusty Saurian friend Kakuku. However, you can also gun down the enemies during this mode. Tap or hold attack to shoot bullets, which count as normal attack, and this means he can trigger things like Yolan's, Beto's, and Xingqiu's bursts, unlike certain someone. Now, by mashing attack to shoot, I usually end up doing 11 shots, when compared to just holding down the attack. This way, I am able to squeeze out 13 shots, so I recommend to always just hold down the attack. But as you can see, each shot heals for about 300 HP, which is like, what the Oyo? Like, yeah, it's a team-wide heal, but after 13 shots, everyone ends up getting healed for about 4000 HP. And let's say you raise the skill to talent level 9. It's still only healing barely 900 more per teammate. The scaling here is terrible, and that's why I'm using prototype Amber. Of course, that's assuming he's on a Furina team, since this weapon's passive at least helps with healing and restores him energy. But outside Furina teams, sure, you could use something like Sacrificial Fragments or Hakushin Ring, or steal one of the 5-star EM weapons from one of the units you have it on. But yeah, unless you get him to C6, where his healing becomes about twice as good, then he will not be enough to generate fanfare for Furina teams, and even C3 will not help him by much here. And you know what else is small? These shots deal very low damage as expected, but he can trigger a reaction every other shot, which will be his main way to deal damage. And to help him with this, the first passive comes to the rescue. Okay, so this passive is actually quite complicated, but long story short, during the skill mode, he will boost everyone's swirl and electrocharge damage based on how much Night Soul points the entire party has. Now at C0, each Night Soul points becomes 1 Rescue Essentials point, and then this point is then boosting those reactions by 1.5%, and since you can have at most 150 rescue points, that will be 225% boost to swirl and electrocharged. However, if you haven't seen my Mizuki video, this this boost works exactly the same. It doesn't actually multiply the damage, but instead it's added to this complicated formula where in the end, for example, let's say he has 160 Night Soul points, which is already maxing out this passive thanks to Auroran being in the team, since his Night Soul points also count. At maximum 150 Night Soul points, we can see Auroran's Electro Charge reaction goes from 8,075 to 15,343, so roughly 7,200 damage increase, or basically it almost gets doubled. In other words, this passive is meh for swirls, but the Electro Charge damage boost is pretty good. However, here's the thing, since this boosting depends on current Night Soul points amount in the whole team, when you press the skill, he will always start off with best boosting, but then it will decay over time, so it will become worse and worse as seconds go by, since Night Soul points he has are getting drained, and if others in the team are also losing Night Soul points, well, the damage will keep decreasing. Another problem here is that this whole passive depends on his skill's duration, which is the Night Soul Blessing state, and it has the usual shenanigans. So if you dash or try to fly up or basically do any kind of unnecessary movement besides floating around, the bar will be rapidly drained, so a couple of dodges can quickly end this skill. So yeah, a pretty weird and quite obnoxious passive ability, but it's the main reason you'd want to use Aoife in teams. Oh, and he also has second passive that boosts his elemental mastery by 80 for 10 seconds after a Night Soul burst is triggered. So if you haven't figured it out by now, Aoife's main teams are going to be Taser comms, and his best teammates are going to be Furina, Yelan, and Xingqiu as Hydro options, and then Fischl, Auroran, Beidou, or Yaimiko as Electro options. But honestly, if you want to get the most value out of Aoife, then Auroran is a must-have teammate since he works super well together with Aoife, and his Night Soul points contribute to better swirl and Electro Charge damage. And as I said, if you will use Furina, I highly recommend equipping him with Prototype Amber so he can heal the team for more. But if you unlock his final constellation, then you can use any other viable weapon option as shown here. But I prefer Hakushin Rings simply because it's a craftable, and since he will stay on field, it's the perfect weapon to boost both Hydro and Electro. Still, I must remind you here that I captured footage against multiple enemies in Abyss, but the usual problems of Taser are still present here, meaning against single target, Taser is quite weak, so this team archetype is best against multiple enemies. Now, he can also work fine with Mawika in a team like this, but you already should know by now that Mawika is going to be pulling all the weight here. However, him on VV set and extra Night Soul points he generates is something Mawika can appreciate. Now, as a twist, he can actually equip Cinder City and join Wanderer's team to act as a glorified buffer with this artifact set. In fact, he also, I believe, generates 4 to 5 animal particles, so that can be very useful here, and he can also help set up rotations way easier with Benny and Farazan. So overall, he is a nice Cinder City holder and teammate for Wanderer. And of course, since he is a Catalyst user, I highly recommend equipping him with Thrilling Tales to help boost Wanderer's damage by a ton. Also, I guess you could give him Obsidian Codex set and slap him on a strong Catalyst, so he can become a main damage dealer. But it's not gonna be super good. Although if you put in Farazan, Benny, and another flexible support, sure, he can get the job done. Again, this is more of a build for those who just want to main Aoife. Other than that, yeah, he doesn't have that many teams. He's kinda like Mizuki, best utilized in Taser comps, but as you saw, Wanderer also appreciates him. Okay, so let's talk about his constellations, and then I'll share my thoughts about him. At C1, his skill will restore him 6 energy every 8 seconds, so I believe you can get 12 energy, which is pretty decent, but not really a super relevant upgrade for him, unless you want to trigger Prototype Amber consistently. Now at C2, he actually starts gaining 4 additional rescue points when the party has over 60 Night Soul points, and the maximum cap is increased by 50. What this means is that the Swirl and Electro Charge buff will decay much slower, and will be even stronger at the beginning of Aoife's skill. Then C3 gives +3 levels to the skill, so in reality better healing, and then C4 I believe makes the burst group up enemies more efficiently, and he will gain 100 EM for 15 seconds after using it, so pretty useful. And when looking at C5, it's kinda useless to be honest, since those extra levels won't matter when the burst multipliers are bigger, because Aoife is built with full EM. And then finally we have C6. In a nutshell, he will be able to shoot many more times, which means more healing. The extra damage is like whatever, but this extra healing will be super useful in Furina teams, although other than that, he also gains a bit longer exploration time. Still, it's not a broken C6, but like more of a slap to the face if you want to play him in Furina teams. Overall, I'd say getting him to C2 is enough, but C3 is decent if you play him in Furina teams. Otherwise, just don't pull for him specifically, due to the random nature of 4 stars on a featured banner. Now, as for what do I think of him, I think he's a slightly better Mizuki after he unlocks C6. Before C6, he's definitely a worse Mizuki, although I would argue that he actually has a strong advantage against her, and that's because he can use Xingqiu, Yelan, and Beidou in taser comms, unlike Mizuki, who cannot trigger those special attacks and just floats around. But yeah, unfortunately, Hoyo made sure to neuter his healing, and that makes me sad because I do enjoy an occasional dude once in a while. Okay, I know how that sounded, but I mean, gacha games are dominated by sexy anime women, so any new dude should be treated gently by every gacha gamer because they're a rare breed. But yeah, Aoife isn't really offering anything super special other than providing boosting to swirl and electrocharge reactions, and he only becomes a serious healer at C6, so use this conclusion however you see him fit, but at the end of the day, he's Animo Catalyst, so that's always super useful, and if you like him, he can be used efficiently in a couple of teams, and also he can fly around, which is always a useful exploration mechanic. Anyway, hope you found this video useful, thanks for watching, and see you soon.